Hello, and welcome to the Vaccine Talk, what parents want to know, brought to you by the Black Coalition for Health, formerly known as the Black Coalition Against COVID, which includes the four historically Black medical schools, Howard, Meharry, Morehouse, and Charles Drew, the National Medical Association, the Cobb Institute of the NMA, the National Black Nurses Association, and our colleagues at blackdoctor.org. We understand that for many reasons, there is a growing confusion and uncertainty regarding vaccines designed to prevent common childhood illnesses. Parents want to protect their children, but many are becoming concerned about the safety of these vaccines, and they have questions. Well, we have answers so that you can make personally appropriate decisions for yourselves, your families, and the communities in which you live. Joining me tonight to provide the answers to your questions is an extraordinarily talented group of physician and science experts. First, I'd introduce Dr. Jerome Adams. Dr. Adams, you may know as the former U.S. Surgeon General, who now is the Executive Director of the Center for Community Health Enhancement and Learning at Purdue University. Dr. Oliver Brooks, pediatrician, Chief Medical Officer, Watts Healthcare Corporation, and Chairman of Immunize LA's Families Coalition, former member of the prestigious ACIP Advisory Committee of the CDC, which we'll talk about in a moment, and a former president of the National Medical Association. We're very pleased that our friend Danielle Hall is here, the Director of Health Equity for the Autism Society of America, where they create connections, empowering everyone in the autism community with the resources needed to live fully. And they are dedicated to creating a world where everyone in the autism community is connected to the support they need when they need it. Dr. Yolanda Hancock, MD, MPH, pediatrician and public health expert, and a very staunch community health advocate, founder of Delta Health and Wellness Consulting, and a founding member of the Black Coalition Against COVID, the Black Coalition for Health. My esteemed colleague, Dr. James Hildreth, PhD, MD, CEO of Meharry Medical College, who is a nationally recognized virologist and infectious disease expert, a member of the FDA Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee. Peter Marks, MD, a good friend of our programs, hematologist, oncologist, and public health specialist, who is the former director of the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research at FDA. He is the person who is the most knowledgeable around vaccines of anyone that I have ever met. Catherine Tucker, Doctor of Nursing Practice, Program Director of Nursing for the City of New Haven, Connecticut, and she oversees school nurses and the city's wellness center, which is a very important part of our conversation tonight. She is also a board member of the National Black Nurses Association. And finally, I am very pleased that Dr. Patricia Whitley Williams has joined us. She is a professor of pediatrics and former chief of pediatric infectious diseases at the Rutgers Robert Wood Johnson Medical School, a former member of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, as was Dr. Brooks. She is also past president of the National Foundation for Infectious Diseases. I am very, very pleased that we have such a strong panel. To begin our program, though, this is a program designed and dedicated towards working with and communicating with our community. And nowhere do we have stronger leadership in our community than represented by four people that are going to give us welcomes now. Let me start with Bishop Leah Daughtry. Bishop Daughtry is the co-chair of the Choose Healthy Life Clergy Council. Bishop Daughtry, you're welcome, please.
Well, thank you so much. Greetings, family. And I'm delighted to be here to represent Choose Healthy Life, which is a faith-based, Black-led health initiative working in churches across the country. And I want to certainly shout out our founder, Deborah Frazier Howes, and our president and CEO, Reverend Kimberly Williams. I am fascinated by this event. I'm so glad you pulled it together. And I want to thank Dr. Reed Tuckson for his leadership in galvanizing us around this very important issue. And also the leaders that we've just met who are coming together to have this critical conversation. As people of faith, we believe in a God who not only heals, but who also gives wisdom. Wisdom to us each, but also wisdom to doctors, researchers, and scientists to create tools that help us protect the lives of our children. One of those tools is vaccination. From the very beginning, God has called us to be stewards of life, to nurture, protect, and care for our families, our communities, and especially our children. Proverbs 22:6 reminds us, train up a child in the way that they should go. This is a call for parents to guide their children with intention and love. And part of that includes giving them a strong, healthy start. Vaccines are a modern day miracle. Diseases that once ravaged our communities, polio, whooping cough, measles, are now rare thanks to the power of prevention. But we can't afford to be complacent. When we skip vaccines, we open the door for those same old enemies to return. Now, I know there's fear, and I know that there's history in our community with vaccines, but let us not let fear outweigh facts, and let us not let pain from the past keep us from protecting our future. I know that many parents feel unsure and overwhelmed by conflicting information, and we know that trust has been eroded in some quarters. But we want you to know that the Black faith and medical communities are united to offer truth, not confusion. Our ancestors prayed for deliverance from plagues. Today, God has answered that prayer through science and medicine. Vaccinating our children is not just a medical decision, it's a moral responsibility. It is an act of faith, it is an act of love, and it is an act of justice because healthy children build strong communities. So let's stand on faith, not fear. Let's protect our babies. And let's thank God for the tools we have to keep them safe. Because when we choose health, we choose life. Thank you, Dr. Tuckson, and we look forward to working with you and your colleagues in the days and weeks ahead.
Well, thank you, Bishop. That was absolutely inspiring and beautiful. Thank you. We know how important parents are in this conversation, and we are very pleased that the national president of Jack and Jill of America Incorporated is joining us. Darlene Whittington, we are looking forward to your welcome.
Fantastic. Can you hear me, Dr. Tuckson?
Very well.
Awesome. Jack and Jill is thrilled to be supportive and a part of this conversation. A conversation about vaccines isn't just timely. We believe that it is essential. And as the national president of Jack and Jill, I see clearly that, and a mother, I see clearly that this is about more than just medical choices. It's about protecting the very futures of the dreams we have for our children. So historically, the Black community has carried justified skepticism towards medical systems that haven't always served us well. Yet we have also been our very own greatest advocates throughout the years, stepping up to protect our own when others would not. Now, as misinformation is continuing to spread and policies are shifting quickly, the risk of preventable diseases is returning to our communities. And this is becoming very real once again, unfortunately. But we can't afford to remain complacent. Our children are our legacy, and we have fought hard to ensure that we have fought hard and we have endured too much, actually, to sacrifice immensely to leave their futures vulnerable to preventable diseases. We are families, fortunately, that are fortunate and blessed to have access to healthcare, many of our families, and insurance that others really dream of. And we bear an even greater responsibility as Jack and Jill. Vaccination is more than just our own personal protection. We look at it as community protection. It's about equity, it's about justice, and it's about making sure our village stays strong and resilient. So tonight, we are committed to empowering ourselves with science-based information, leaning into trusted voices that are going to be on this very call that we're excited to hear from, and advocating passionately for policies that protect our families. So let us ensure that our communities stay safe, that our children thrive, and that our futures remain secure, because our children deserve nothing less than the absolute best. So thank you for inviting us, and we're thrilled to be a part of the conversation.
Thank you so much, President Whittington. We really appreciate you and all the work that you all are doing. One of the best partners that we have had as we've done multiple shows on trying to protect health has been the leadership of the Pan-Hellenic Council. This is an incredible organization that involves the Alpha Phi Alpha, the Kappa Alpha Psi, Omega Psi Phi, Phi Beta Sigma, Iota Phi Theta, Alpha Kappa Alpha, Delta Sigma Theta, Zeta Phi Beta, and Sigma Gamma Rho. What an incredible group of people, and you have been with us every time we have asked. David, Chris Ray, who is the president of the National Pan-Hellenic Council's plane, is late. But boy, they are so well organized, because now I am happy to introduce a great substitute, David Turner, who is the president of one of those fraternities, Phi Beta Sigma. David Turner, a couple of minutes of welcome from you. We are thankful that you are somehow able to make this appearance with us. We appreciate you.
No problem. Good evening. I am David Turner. I am the newly elected international president for Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. But during my time over the last 4 years, I actually served as chair and later co-chair of our PBS Impact Foundation. And so through our fraternal resources, through our foundation, and in partnership with our D9 partners, as well as the National Council of Negro Women, we felt it's certainly important to take up this task, to join with our partners in advancing health information, vaccination information, truthful information. So we know that as we look at pretty much any health category, we look at the health disparities for African Americans across our country. And so again, when this opportunity came up, when we were asked to join in this effort, of course, we jumped at the effort to educate the communities that we serve, to work with the communities that we serve, to ensure the health of our young people, of our communities, again, that we serve and that we pride ourselves on taking care of. And so this is such an important effort, certainly from the vaccination perspective. For us, it's all health disparities for people of color. But glad to be here to join in the conversation this evening.
You are a true hero, brother. Thank you so much, President Turner, for joining with us. And our final welcome is from Quay Noel Kelch, National President of Mocha Moms Incorporated. And I will have to say that we are particularly pleased that you have been a part of this, Quay, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tuckson. I'm Quay Noel Kelch. I'm the National President of Mocha Moms. I would like to thank the Black Coalition for Health in partnership with blackdoctor.org for putting together this very important discussion. Our Mocha moms across the country for holding it down with their families and putting in so much of themselves to keep our families safe and healthy, and for supporting each other, the very purpose of our organization. And to the organizers for bringing my fellow organizational partners together to underscore the extreme importance of this discussion. Mocha Moms is a national nonprofit organization that provides sisterhood, support, and service to mothers of color in more than 60 chapters in 44 states. Our mothers support each other weekly. They get together for monthly events and do a broad range of community service. We host educational summits, health and wellness symposiums, financial literacy workshops. We march for babies. We promote the importance of breastfeeding, cord blood donation, and very importantly, we promote global vaccines. So this issue is very important to us. I want to echo so much of what my fellow partners have already shared. This discussion is more than important. It is vital to the lives of our children and our families. We must continue to educate ourselves and educate each other. It's critical that we as a people come together and resist the attacks that are coming at us so fast and furious and on so many fronts. Our coming together is as important as it was when many of our legacy organizations began. And I want to encourage anyone and everyone watching to recommit to those organizations and to the newer ones as well. We all have to be involved in this fight, and getting to the truth on vaccines is a must. A reminder that one of the most effective tools to destroy a community is through the health of our families. And keeping us distrustful, however valid the mistrust, threatens to literally kill us. So welcome to this discussion. And again, thank you to the organizers and for bringing us all together. I'm sure it's going to be a fruitful discussion.
Thanks so much, President Kelch, and we really appreciate your being here. Later in the program, we will hear from a true friend of ours, and that's Virginia Harris, the national president of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated, and we will be hearing from her later, as well as we'll be hearing from Reverend Al Sharpton, who also is another of the two co-chairs of the Choose Healthy Life Clergy Council. But to begin our conversation, let's focus in now on the context for what we're here to look at. Why do we see so much confusion and uncertainty? What's going on here? Let me start with you, Peter Marks, and ask you to help us to understand, how do you see and what are you seeing to be this Make America Healthy Again, this MAHA agenda and philosophy on preventable childhood disease vaccination? And do you have some concerns about what's going on?
Yeah, first of all, Dr. Tuckson, thank you so much for having me. This is, to me, one of the most important things that we can do, which is give people information that they need to make the right choices to keep themselves healthy. That said, this MAHA agenda is one that is a bias against conventional medicine in large part. It is one which has engendered, for reasons that aren't entirely clear to me, but I'll try to speculate, a skepticism towards vaccines, and this idea that vaccines are really just for those who are too weak to fend off various diseases. And in fact, one of the major things that the movement puts forward is that the people who died during the COVID pandemic were just people who were too sick, and that healthy people did not die of COVID, which is false. And it is really a shame that this has gone on. I think just to end with what I think is really behind this is a certain amount of this kind of individual liberties take all, but it's actually, I speculate, more sinister than that, because behind some of this movement is a desire to have wellness products which do not have any proven efficacy take the place of established products like vaccines that we know, and we'll talk, I'm sure, about later, have been well demonstrated to provide public health benefit. And so I really worry that driving this, there is a financial motive, and it is one that is very disturbing because it would do harm to us in order to help people line their pockets. And that is just unacceptable when it comes to public health.
Well, thank you so much, Peter, for those opening comments. By the way, for the audience, since you have questions and we have answers, feel free to indicate your questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to deal with those as we go forward. Dr. Adams, you are former Surgeon General of the United States. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, thank you for having me. And first of all, I want to second what Dr. Mark said. You always need to be careful when you're getting information online, on social media, on TikTok, on Twitter, to follow the money. And the truth is that behind most accounts that are discouraging you from taking vaccinations, there is someone who is profiting from you making that decision or attempting to profit. They're diverting you to their wellness resources, to how they make money. And that was one of the concerning things. We're going to talk about the ACIP disbandment later on, I'm sure. But many individuals who were put on the new ACIP committee at the expense of trusted and long-serving scientists were people who had a financial interest in selling wellness products. That said, you asked about the MAHA agenda. And as Dr. Marks mentioned, it emphasizes individual wellness and personal responsibility, including when it comes to preventable childhood diseases and vaccinations. And that sounds good on its surface, individual wellness, personal responsibility, but that focus becomes problematic when it fails to account for how interconnected we all are in regards to public health. Vaccination isn't just a personal decision, it's a communal one, because the health of one person could affect the health of many, especially those who are too young, immunocompromised, or otherwise unable to be vaccinated. The fact is, we don't live in isolation, and public health only works when we act with a sense of shared responsibility. So what concerns me is this MAHA philosophy, when combined with recent policy decisions, is seriously undermining public health infrastructure that we have spent decades building. For example, we're seeing proposed and actual cuts to Medicaid and other governmental support systems that help ensure vulnerable families can access preventative care, including vaccines. And people don't have coverage if they don't have transportation, if they don't have access to trusted information, if they don't have access to fresh and healthy foods, their ability to make personal choices to be healthy becomes severely limited. And that is what is going to be the result of a lot of what's going on at the federal level right now. In closing, we've also seen abrupt and concerning shifts in vaccine policy at the federal level, such as recent dismissal of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices members that has served since the 1960s. We've never seen anything like this, and it's undermining trusted science-based advisory bodies. It's injecting uncertainty, and it's eroding public trust at exactly the moment when we need more of it.
Well, thank you very much for those observations. Dr. Hancock, you are a pediatrician seeing patients every day, late into the night quite often. What do you think? Why do you think many parents are choosing not to vaccinate their kids? And what are the consequences of failure to vaccinate in inadequate numbers to, as Dr. Adams talks about, protecting the community?
Absolutely. Well, first, Dr. Tuckson, thank you so much for having me, and also to blackdoctors.org. I think that there are two main factors that have increased vaccine hesitancy. The first is fear. Parents do not want to make the wrong decision. They're getting information from all over the place, and a lot of it is misinformation. So information created that's incorrect, but not purposefully done so. There's disinformation, information created purposefully to give wrong information. And then it's the lack of trust within the medical and government institutions. There's always been some vaccine hesitancy as early as the polio vaccine, but this got acutely worse in the 90s when former physician Andrew Wakefield published a study showing falsely a link between immunization, specifically the MMR vaccine, and autism. It took over a decade for the Lancet, one of the most world-renowned medical journals, to finally retract the study, and the UK to remove his medical license. But by then, as my grandmother would say, the horse was out of the barn and had made numerous laps. So it's hard to then convince families that that information was wrong, especially when you have celebrities coming out speaking against immunizations based on this information. That grounded in the second factor, lack of proximity, right? So some of us 50 plus have experienced ourselves or know someone close to us that has had polio, that had whooping cough, that had Haemophilus influenza associated epiglottitis. I've taken care of patients with these diseases, so I know how significantly ill children can become and how close to death, if not dying, resulting from these vaccine preventable illnesses. And so for all of those reasons, parents are fearful of making the wrong choice. The consequence is that children are going to get sick. Children will die. Infectious diseases that we really not had to deal with in decades will not only come back, but make a surge. And it won't just be children. It will also be our seniors, because as we know, as you get older, you become more immunocompromised. We are currently experiencing the largest measles outbreak in the past 33 years. And there are physicians who are trained who've never seen these diseases, so it's going to be harder for them to be able to recognize it. And as we move forward, insurance companies are going to stop covering immunizations if families do not take advantage of them, or we continue to see these policies pass. And lastly, pediatricians are going to start retiring en masse because we know what needs to be done to protect children, but to put ourselves and children at risk will make it even harder, and burnout will become even worse.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hancock. let's shift our conversation to understanding some things about vaccines and the basics of vaccines so that we all have the same foundation to have the conversation. And let me turn to my colleague, Dr. Hildreth. If you could please help us to understand what vaccines are and how are they different from drugs that are used to treat a disease?
So first, Dr. Tuckson, thank you for having this very important conversation. I'm happy to be a part of it. Vaccines are substances designed to train our immune systems to respond to pathogens of various sorts, viruses or bacteria. The human immune system is quite
Oh, I think, did we lose your voice? Look, keep going. I'm sorry.
Uh-oh.
There, now I hear you. You're back.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. But as I was saying, we're blessed with a remarkable immune system. And what vaccines do is it prepares them to respond to viruses and bacteria the next time we see them. And as I was saying before, it's quite remarkable because the number of different things we can respond to is probably 100 million to 1 trillion different things. They differ from drugs in the sense that drugs treat diseases when they've occurred. Vaccines are designed to prevent diseases from happening in the first place. They also differ because the way we test vaccines is in healthy people who are not infected, who are not sick. Drugs are evaluated in folks who have that particular disease. And the other thing that's very important to know is that drugs have an impact at the level of one individual. If we immunize sufficient numbers of people, we can achieve herd immunity, which means we can protect whole populations. And that's a very important thing for people to know. And so vaccines are more or less prophylactic and drugs, of course, therapeutic. And that's the big difference between the two.
And I think your point that you make, Dr. Hildreth, around the notion of the community role of vaccines versus the individual treatment. And we've got it. And I think one of the themes that came through in all of the welcomes, James, is the notion that we as a community are in this together and that we are responsible for each other in addition to ourselves. So thank you for that. Dr. Marks, one of the things that we are hearing as we interview people in preparation for the show was that many people are concerned about the potential harm of ingredients. They hear things like thimerosal, formaldehyde, aluminum in childhood vaccines. What do we need to know about these, the potential harm of any of these ingredients?
Yeah, this goes back to what Dr. Hildreth said, which are vaccines by definition, because they're given to healthy people. They are among the safest of medical products in what we let get put into them. And although thimerosal was never shown to cause autism, as an abundance of caution, in about 2000, it was taken out of all childhood vaccines. The only thimerosal containing vaccine now are multi-dose vials of the influenza vaccine, which are not used that often. And it's not around in vaccines. There might be the smallest traces in certain vaccines, but nothing that is of any concern whatsoever. When we talk about formaldehyde, the traces of formaldehyde in vaccines today are by far less than the amount that you actually take in your diet. So again, not something to get worried about at all. And aluminum in vaccines, aluminum is used as something in certain vaccines to help stimulate the immune system. It is one of the safest things to do so, and it does so very effectively. And as something called an adjuvant, it's something that's not what gives you the immune response itself, but it helps generate that immune response in a robust way. And aluminum's been studied extensively, and at the doses it's used in childhood vaccines and in adult vaccines, for that matter, it's considered to be safe. And there are recent studies that confirm that safety, despite the fact that I am sure in the coming months we'll hear people trying to make us afraid of aluminum vaccines. And just so we're aware, aluminum has been used in vaccines for a century now. And although some would argue there's more now than there was in the past, again, it is not something that we should get alarmed about at all. And just the final word on this, just so we know, although aluminum is not something that has a function in the body, because it is the most abundant metal in the Earth's crust, we all take in aluminum every day. And so we see this in this metal. So again, these things are being used to generate fear, to discourage people from taking vaccines that are potentially life-saving. And unfortunately, rather than seeing people kept healthy, as I think Dr. Adams was talking about, what we're seeing is this degradation of health by focusing on these things which really are not relevant.
These things have been studied, as you've said, for years and years. They've been used for a century, yet without adverse consequences. We've known these things. They've been rehearsed. They're in the diet. They're in the food we eat. They're around us. And so there are alarmists who would get us all out of
and Dr. Tuckson, I will say this, what's very important to note, which is that anytime a vaccine shows any hint of an excess in adverse events, it is generally pulled from the market either permanently or until we can understand what's going on. And that's because we don't have tolerance, and as we shouldn't have tolerance for significant adverse effects in vaccines. But they are, as you said, extremely well studied.
Dr. Hildreth, one quick question. As we talk to school nurses, they're telling us that they're getting a lot of questions around mRNA-based vaccines and fears that somehow it will change the recipient's DNA. And there's actually things in the news today about mRNA vaccines as well. Can you just give us a quick update on this?
So the first thing to know is that mRNA is a working blueprint for proteins. It's a copy of our DNA, and the DNA represents our permanent blueprints for everything in our bodies. And the thing to know is that DNA is compartmentalized within the nucleus. mRNA never gets into the nucleus, so there's no opportunity for mRNA to interact with the DNA. And the only instance we know of when this can happen is when retroviruses have enzymes that can convert RNA into DNA. There are no such enzymes in the cytoplasm of human cells. So mRNA has been studied since the late 60s. And in hundreds of studies, there's no evidence whatsoever that mRNA can impact DNA, change the structure, and integrate into DNA. So I would say that that's something we need not worry about. The evidence is overwhelming that in human cells, at least, mRNA cannot impact DNA and change it in any way.
Thank you so much. And this is a topic we may have to come back to in other programs, because this is something that people are really concerned about. But you've just really given us the facts that we need to understand. And let's just be very clear that these mRNA-based vaccines cannot get into the cell and be able to affect the DNA, the nucleus of the cell. They cannot get into the nucleus of the cell and affect DNA.
And if I might add one more thing, they have very short half-lives. So they're not going to be around very long in the first place. And that's by design. So that's one thing we have working in our favor, that these are transient molecules that do their thing in making the protein and then they disappear.
One of the areas I want to turn to now is to deal with how is the safety of these vaccines, and in particular, how they are approved. I think that we've all seen and heard news stories that some of the key committees that have historically provided the external review of the safety of these vaccines, as well as their effectiveness, have now been dismantled by the current administration. Dr. Marks, can you help us just to understand, and our audience to understand, how these committees work and how we review how safe and effective these vaccines are, and how do we make sure that the scientists that are doing this work are pure in terms of their effort and not coming to this work with conflicts of interest?
Yeah, well, thanks. I think let's just back it up to what happens at the Food and Drug Administration, which is those scientists are essentially very well vetted for conflict of interest. They can't hold any holdings in any type of pharmaceutical industry, be it vaccine or otherwise. And so the people who are evaluating the vaccines that are submitted, they just don't have that. And in fact, when I was the head of that area, you could look, I had publicly any holding I had was available. So there's some transparency there. Just like when those vaccines are taken before the advisory committee at the FDA that covers vaccines, those individuals are vetted for conflict of interest. And so I think we know that the vaccines that have made it across the process to date have been well vetted for being high quality, safe, and effective. I think there's a question that came across to me through various channels of, can we trust the vaccines that are on the market currently? And I think I can say pretty certainly yes, because they've been through a very careful vetting process. It is true that that process has been degraded now with what's happened with the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices being disbanded and reformed. Let's speak truth here, that if anything, the good news is they're going to push against vaccines rather than try to give vaccines that are unsafe out there. So I wouldn't worry about that piece of it. I think the important thing is that the intrinsic goodness of the vaccines that are out there, measles, mumps, rubella, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, other childhood vaccines like for pneumococcal pneumonia, Haemophilus influenza, those vaccines are safe and effective, and nothing has changed about them. The only thing that may have changed is that the force in which we encourage people as public health professionals from the federal government has changed because of some of this backtracking on vaccines, again, to the detriment, I think, of public health.
You know, Peter, I'm glad you spoke clearly to one of the big issues that the current administration uses to justify putting to disband the original committees and bringing the new one in, and that was that somehow you are in bed with an unholy alliance with big pharma. That keeps coming up, and I listened very carefully to what you said. You, as the leader of that organization, you were completely transparent. All of your financial dealings were made available, and so I just want to give that clear that this misinformation about that we have a chance to correct. Dr. Hildreth, you serve on the FDA's Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee, this key one. Can you help us to understand whether or not, are you in bed with in an unhealthy way with big pharma?
No, Reed, I can assure you that I'm not, and I can attest to what Dr. Marks said. Before I was allowed to serve on the VRPAC, I had to disclose all of my investments. It went beyond just myself, my family members. I had to disclose whether or not they had any stock or remuneration from pharma companies. And you have to keep in mind that some of the big companies have partnerships or collaborations with many, many smaller companies. So the level of scrutiny goes down to those smaller companies as well. So the amount of time it takes to get all of that done is enormous, but it ensures that the process is objective and that we don't have our thumb on the scale or that we're in bed with the pharma companies. And I find it insulting that anybody would say that. My colleagues and I have devoted our whole lives to the science that we do. We're volunteers to make sure that the vaccines are safe for the public. And I would not have recommended my own family members to take the vaccines were that not the case. And so I can assure you that the members of the VRPAC, all of us, as Dr. Marks has said, go through a rigorous process of monitoring conflicts of interest and disclosure. And if you go to the VRPAC website, you can actually see that my conflict of interest is right there. And my conflict is that I'm the president of Meharry Medical College. Meharry did one of the studies for one of the vaccines. That's how highly scrutinized this process is. And I will leave it.
I think that I appreciate how calm you are when you said that it's insulting to you. How dare Dr. Brooks? Let's bring Dr. Brooks in, because Brooks, there are two major committees, the ones that we just heard about at the FDA, but there's a companion committee that evaluates the safety and effectiveness of vaccines at the CDC. And you serve on the CDC's advisory committee on immunization practices. What is your perspective on this issue of trustworthiness and validity?
Yes, first, thank you very much, Dr. Tuxton and blackdoctor.org for allowing me to be part of this expert panel. So I was on the ACIP until June 5th when we were disbanded. The reason given was that we had conflicts of interest. So it's already been stated categorically, and I have to underscore what Dr. Hildreth did. When I was asked to be on the ACIP, that was one of the proudest moments of my life, along with, let's say, being president of the National Medical Association. So we members, and I can speak for all of them that were there when I was there, we took it as an honor, but we also took it as a sacred trust, and I mean that. So we followed the rules. Before we were allowed to be confirmed, we had to submit conflict of interest information, just like Dr. Hildreth was saying. We followed the science. There are ways that the ACIP developed about 25 years ago or so that we want to go all the way through. There are domains, and I say that to say there's 7 domains that we look at before we vote on a vaccine. But one of the domains that I want to put into play is equity. Equity was not one of the domains that was put in February 2018. So this is how open, how thoughtful, how resolute the workings of the ACIP became. There's a community member on there, non-scientists, just so we get the perspective of the community. Something happened this week in the last 7 days. Okay, so the structure of the advisory committee on immunization practices is such that you have 17 members, you have certain ex officio members, national NIH, the FDA, and these groups, Indian Health Service, CMS, Medicaid and Medicare. But there are liaison organizations. Those liaison organizations provide input from their perspective. Now, they were just released from having any working relationship with the ACIP. And the reason that was given was they were biased and they were representing special interest groups. So let me give you a couple of examples. The American Academy of Pediatrics was representing a special interest group called Children. The American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology were let go because they were representing a special interest group of pregnant women. National Foundation of Infectious Disease was also cut. Infectious Disease Society of America. They were cut because they were representing people who might get infected. And then the National Medical Association was let go because they represent Black doctors in the Black community. So this is what's happening right now. So it is concerning in that this is now how major decisions regarding the use. Now, importantly, also the FDA says the vaccine is safe and effective. American ACIP determines how you use it. So that's also important. So all the bias and all the conflicts of interest, that's not on us. It's not on any of us. But that is where we are now. So the question will arise as we go forward in this evening, and where do we go from here? But I'm giving you my perspective in terms of being a member of ACIP and how I see where we were, where we are, but most
I think, Dr.
where are we going?
I think what you're getting at here, and I want to just emphasize then, is that you've been on this committee for a long time. You are this so there's this belt and suspenders approach to safety. There's the FDA committee with external people, not in the agency, and there are then the CDC committee working together. You all have been at this for a long time, and that you've been attesting to the safety and the efficacy of these drugs for a long time. And I think that's very important. Let me bring in Danielle Hall to join our conversation, because one of the big issues that people have been concerned about, and this has been a lot of hot topic in the news, and that is an alleged relationship between childhood vaccines and autism. So Danielle Hall, can you help us understand what's going on here? And first of all, understand what is autism and how do we come to understand if there is any relationship between autism and childhood vaccines?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Tuckson and BlackDoctors.org for allowing me to be among all these experts today. This is nothing new. This concern has lingered for years, and it's based, of course, on misinformation and fear and not science. We've all spoken about this. What we need to have is a better understanding of what autism is. So autism is not a disease. It is not contagious. It is not caused by vaccines. It's a developmental disability, and it affects how people communicate and interact socially and experience the world. And no two cases are the same. It's lifelong. It's on a spectrum, which means that each person's strengths and challenges and support needs are going to be unique and different. It's not caused by a single factor, and research shows that it's likely an interplay of genetics and early brain development. Dr. Hancock did a great job of discussing the false narrative and how this has started, all with that 1998 study. I don't like to really quote his name and give him any more publicity that's out there, but of course he lost his medical license and for ethical violations and scientific fraud. But once fear takes hold, especially when it's around children's health, it just continues to spread. And despite all the scientific research and consensus disproving this link, the damage has been done, and this false narrative continues just to fuel the vaccine hesitancy and mistrust. And we've never seen it as out of control as it has with this administration. We continue to enforce that vaccines do not cause autism. What we want to stop is perpetuating this myth, which is really harmful because it's distracting the needs of autistic individuals and families, and it's leading to dangerous consequences like the declining vaccination rates that we've seen and that we're going to continue to see this fall. What we're seeing with measles is really, really, really heartbreaking. So we're doing a lot of work to pre-bunk and debunk and advocate for this inclusive healthcare, for better and early identification and how to support autistic individuals. How can we increase that trust between the medical community and families? And I think this step tonight is on the right path forward. This is where we should be putting all the energy towards equity and access and science.
Well, thank you so much, Danielle. I mean, obviously, as you all are clearly the people who care so much about our brothers and sisters who are living with autism. This is a passion for you. I know that you are also involved in the equity agenda for the Autism Society. And so you really do care about everyone in this country. And so if you're the ones who are caring about this so much, your voice on this issue is extremely important and impactful. So I thank you for joining us. I want to turn to a taped message that we have from Reverend Al Sharpton before we move on to our next part of our conversation. If we can tee up Reverend Sharpton, please.
My brothers and sisters, this is Reverend Al Sharpton. I want to talk to you today not as a father or grandfather, but as the co-chair of Choose Healthy Life, because we're living in a moment where truth, the actual literal truth, is under attack, especially trust in systems that are meant to keep our children safe. Across the country, we're seeing an alarming rise of vaccine hesitancy, and particularly around childhood vaccinations. These childhood vaccinations have protected generations of our young people from serious illness and even death. Let me be clear, this is not about politics. This is about protecting our babies. The Black church has always been a place of refuge, of healing, and of truth. And we must raise our voices now, guided by faith and by science. That is why I stand with my brother, Dr. Reed Tuckson, and the Coalition of Black Medical Leaders, who are hosting this vital town hall. And that's why Choose Healthy Life is proud to lend our voice and support. We cannot let misinformation rob our children of a healthy future. I urge every parent, every grandparent, every caretaker, talk to your doctor, ask questions, and take action to protect your child. Our faith calls us to act with wisdom, and our calling is to choose healthy life. God bless you. Let's keep our children safe, and let's not be so heavenly bound that we're no earthly good.
Thank you so much, Reverend. Appreciate you very much. Let's bring in Dr. Adams again, and I'd like to now turn our conversation to its understanding the benefits to our nation of having had previously such wide adoption of childhood vaccines, and help us understand, have there been any significant reports of harm over all that period of time? And you are a former U.S. Surgeon General, so your perspective is very important.
Well, thank you for that opportunity. And I just want to foot stomp something that the Reverend Sharpton highlighted. That's actually a sad irony right now. We often talk about the Tuskegee experiments, but many people don't know or remember what actually occurred. Those experiments were led by the Office of the Surgeon General, which I led, several years ago. And that office actually denied medical care to Black men for an infectious disease. That was the tragedy of the Tuskegee experiments. They allowed Black men to continue suffering from syphilis so they could see how it played out, and denied them access to penicillin. The irony now is that Black people are being scared into denying themselves actual health care. And many of the protections that are currently being torn down that you heard spoken of earlier, the VERB Pact, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, a lot of the policies were put in place to prevent anything like Tuskegee from ever happening again. And we're now seeing those being torn down. But that said, as a former United States Surgeon General, I can say unequivocally that when childhood vaccines are adopted, they deliver immense benefits to our nation. And it's why every Surgeon General in history has supported vaccinations since they've been widely available. When you consider this year's measles resurgence in Texas, between late January and June, over 750 confirmed cases were reported. Tragically, 2 school-aged children died, and it's worth noting that both of them were unvaccinated. And beyond dying, 97 individuals have been hospitalized between January and June in what is now the largest U.S. measles outbreak in 3 decades. In 2025, we've had over 1,300 cases, the highest annual total in 30 years. Meanwhile, whooping cough, or pertussis, is also bouncing back rapidly. More than 8,000 U.S. cases have been reported this year, over 6 times the number that we logged in 2023. And they've resulted in several hospitalizations and 2 additional childhood deaths in Louisiana. So the bottom line, Dr. Tuckson, is these aren't isolated signals. They're part of a broader trend. Following the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen routine childhood immunizations drop significantly across the globe, with 67 million children missing at least one standard vaccine dose between 2019 and 2022. And marginalized populations, underrepresented minority populations, are unfortunately constituting a significant number of that 67 million children who are now at increased risk, launching a resurgence in preventable diseases around the world and back here at home. I want to close by saying measles is one of the most contagious respiratory viruses that we know. It can lead to encephalitis, death, and as I mentioned, hospitalization. But the MMR vaccine is 97% effective at preventing measles when 2 doses are given, and has a decades-long safety record. Serious adverse events can happen, but they're extremely rare, and ongoing surveillance systems like VAERS and ACIP have ensured ongoing safety monitoring. But the most important thing you can ask your doctors and ask all of us on this call is, are we vaccinated? Are our children and our families vaccinated? So when I'm talking to my patients, I tell them what I've done. I have 3 children. They've all received their up-to-date vaccinations. And it's because I, as a physician, know that the benefits far outweigh the risk. So while no medical intervention is entirely risk-free, there's no such thing as zero risk. The evidence is overwhelmingly clear that vaccines are exceptionally safe and immensely beneficial.
Thank you so much for that. Let me bring Dr. Whitley Williams into our conversation. And Dr. Whitley Williams, I'm very interested in what you are saying to the parents who believe that it's okay to avoid vaccination because we can just simply treat the disease if it appears. What do you say to parents when they say that?
Well, certainly. Thank you, Dr. Tuckson, and to blackdoctor.org for this invitation and for holding this excellent town hall. I just wanted to also clarify that I was the liaison member from the National Medical Association to the ACIP and served in that capacity for many years. I wish your audience could really have observed the amount of work, the high integrity, the high professionalism, just the passion that not only the liaison members had, but certainly the members on the ACIP and the staff at the CDC. They truly cared about making sure that any vaccine that was recommended was safe and was highly effective. So we can move on from there, but certainly. So when I talk to my parents, what I say to them is, you're asking good questions, and I'm happy that you pose these questions to me. Let's have a conversation. If you wait until your child actually has the disease, thinking that you're going to have lifelong immunity, that's really kind of playing a high-risk game with your child. You wouldn't put your child in a car and not put them in an appropriate child restraint or safety seat and then drive 100 miles down the road. You just wouldn't do that. And I'd like to compare that to vaccinating your child. If the chance that you take in waiting to vaccinate your child is that they may actually develop pertussis or whooping cough, or they may get meningitis. I think you heard Dr. Hancock mention about Haemophilus B. We call it Hib meningitis. When I was in training, we saw hundreds of cases. We no longer see that anymore. That's a bacterial meningitis. Sometimes the public calls it spinal meningitis, but it was the leading cause of meningitis in children. And it was eliminated with the development of a highly effective and safe vaccine. So why would you want to put your child at risk of developing a disease for which we have a vaccine available that's highly effective and very safe? And I can say that's true because we know that we have eliminated polio. And in fact, polio has been eliminated all over the world, except for in certain places where polio vaccination coverage rates are not high. So, and as you've heard, the measles outbreak here in this country going on now, we're only halfway through the year. And yes, there are over 1,300 cases of measles. And there were 3 deaths. I think that's been updated. There were 3 deaths, and 37% of those patients were hospitalized. 2/3 of those cases were in children. And we talked about protecting our future, which is so precious. Why would we even, no child should die of measles in this country because we have a highly effective vaccine. So
Right.
This is some of the discussion that I have with my parents.
Thank
Dr.
you so much.
Tuckson, I just want to emphasize a point that Dr. Whitley Williams made, and that is that it is okay for you as a parent to have a question. You should never feel ashamed to ask a question, and a good pediatrician, a good doctor, a good nurse, a good health provider will listen to you with compassion and answer your question. So the problem isn't you having a question. The problem is when you fail to ask that question of a trusted health provider and get answers from a reputable source. We don't want you going to TikTok or Facebook to get your questions about vaccines answered. We want you to go to your pediatrician, to your doctor, and get those questions answered.
Well, I know a very great pediatrician to ask a question of. And so, Dr. Hancock, let's take this down to the Black community level. And how concerned are you that as these coverage wanes and becomes less robust in the communities, how much risk are we in the Black community?
We're in significant risk, Dr. Tuxen. And to be honest with you, we're all at risk if we lose herd immunity, even for those of us who are immunized. We know that vaccines, as amazing as they are, aren't 100% effective. So with increased cases, we get increased exposure. With increased exposure, we have increased risk of developing diseases that we really haven't had to deal with. Specifically, our very young population, little ones who are too young to get immunizations, will be at highest risk. So particularly those under the age of 2 months. Our seniors will be at increased risk. As we get older, our immune systems weaken over time. And so that puts them at increased risk when we start to see these diseases pop up again. Those individuals who are receiving chemotherapy, immunotherapy, radiation treatments, all of them are impacted by having increased risk of developing or being exposed to these diseases. And individuals who can't receive immunizations, they may have had an allergic reaction, they may have had a significant adverse event to the immunizations. All of those are populations that we really have to take into consideration. And then we also have to think about, to Dr. Adams' point before, with decreasing coverage of Medicare and Medicaid, there are going to be a lot of people, particularly people of color, specifically Black people, who won't have access to care if and when they do develop these diseases that will allow them to get timely, effective care. So instead of putting ourselves in a position of risk in terms of needing treatment and not being able to access it, why not practice what we call in public health primary prevention by avoiding getting the disease at all?
That is such a key point. And let's just be really clear about it. As you said, with decreasing Medicaid coverage and decreasing insurance coverage generally, which is also getting ready to happen, we're going to have a lot of people that will not have access to healthcare. We've got to prevent the problem before it occurs. Let me bring in Catherine Tucker, who is an extraordinary nurse, who has a very special point of view here. Catherine Tucker, you are involved with with what's going on in our schools. And so what concerns you as you are supervising the nurses that are in your town, in your city? And you might take off and there you go. Up. There you go.
Thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Tuxen, and to blackdoctors.org, just to have the opportunity to speak to this significant issue. And working with the school nurses in my community in New Haven, there's a significant concern. We have a large undocumented population as well in New Haven. And so we really want to make a strong point to all the people in our community that we strongly support vaccination. And we are working very diligently to try to get all the kids vaccinated before they start school for September. We're really working hard to dispel a lot of the myths that are out there right now. And we hear a lot of them. We hear all of them. But I think it's a really important position for school nurses to take, to make sure that we're allowing parents to have the accurate information, providing access to vaccinations to those that don't have coverage, people who do struggle with access because maybe they're afraid to come out to get the care that they need for whatever the reason. That's a significant concern in some communities. And we really do need to knock that square in the face, because we really need to make sure that people get the care that they need so it doesn't put the rest of us all and all the children at risk.
Thank you. By the way, I just want to alert President Harris, I'm going to be coming your way in just a couple of minutes here. But I want to follow up on this notion around the school and they're starting to see the rescinding of requirements for mandatory vaccines before you go back to school. Is this something, and Dr. Adams, I'm going to ask you to comment on this in a second, but Catherine, is this something that concerns you in your official role?
Are you asking me, Dr. Tuxen?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, Catherine Tucker. Yes, please. From your point of view.
Okay, so yeah, so in Connecticut, I can tell you that we have very strong laws around immunizations. And one of the things that I know is they eliminated the religious exemption. But people, still have the ability to decline immunizations for legitimate medical concerns and reasons. But we really do strongly encourage vaccinations for as many people that are able to have vaccinations. And I just think it was a wise move And it goes a long way in trying to improve vaccine compliance. And we've seen significant progress, but we still have our challenges in the populations that I mentioned.
And
Very
Dr.
briefly,
Tuxen, may I make a quick statement there?
please.
So in
Yeah.
California, we passed no personal belief exemptions. What we saw, and we were only one of 3 states, West Virginia and Mississippi, who can tell, we saw our immunization rates go up, period. So it's like there's science again. People, children, mothers, families want their children to go to school. They got to get vaccinated. Saw the immunization rates go up. So the opposite. You remove the blockage of, or you allow personal belief exemptions, which is a religious exemption, and you will see the immunization rates go down. It's just fundamental.
Wow, thank you for that. That's a very helpful observation, Dr. Brooks. Dr. Adams, I know you are working at the state level with a number of people. Are you seeing a trend now that is of concern to you by the number of states that are rescinding mandatory vaccines for kids going back to school?
Well, you and I are both on the board of IDPN, Dr. Tuxen, and the Infectious Disease Prevention Network. And we've watched with alarm a growing legislative strategy to rescind school-age vaccine mandates. Across more than 15 states, legislators are introducing bills to weaken or eliminate religious and philosophical exemptions, or in some cases, eliminate vaccine requirements outright. As we've seen most starkly in Idaho, now the only state to ban all school vaccine mandates. The truth is these efforts strategically undermine public health protections by normalizing what we call exemption clustering when communities fall below the 95% vaccination threshold needed to sustain herd immunity. This opens the door to the resurgence of measles, pertussis, and other serious diseases. And such bills not only strip away protections upheld since Jacobson versus Massachusetts, which was a case decided in 1905, 120 years ago, establishing the authority of states to mandate vaccinations, but these bills also threaten the constitutional principle that reasonable public health measures can supersede personal choice when public welfare is at stake. And a point was made earlier, I can't say it enough. That public welfare, the burden is going to disproportionately fall on marginalized populations, underrepresented populations, because when you get measles, when you get COVID, when you get whooping cough and find out that you don't have insurance coverage, you are going to be more likely to die, or even if you don't die, you're going to be more likely to be stuck with a $10,000, $20,000, $25,000 hospital bill because of the treatment that you had to get that wasn't covered. So the danger is clear. Dismantling mandatory school immunizations undermines community protection, increases risk for vulnerable children and populations, and creates fertile ground for preventable outbreaks.
And so I would urge everyone to decide, again, as we are active in our state politics, our community politics, you should add your voice to the protection of not only your kids, but all the other children as you look at that agenda. And Dr. Tucker, Doctor of Nursing Practice, I think you have really made it easy for us to understand that we can, in our schools, talk to the school nurse, that you all are approachable. They're all just as nice as you are.
Yes, thank you. We are here. Talk to your school nurses. Don't forget the nurses.
All right.
And I'm sure Reverend Sharpton would emphasize this point. It is critical that you all get involved in midterm elections. I'm not telling you how to vote, but it's critical that you make your voice heard, because these midterm elections often determine local policy, state policy, in a way that those once every 4-year presidential elections don't. We have about 80% participation in most presidential elections. That drops to 40% in midterm elections, where a lot of these conversations about local policy, local control, vaccine mandates are determined.
And again, no one telling anybody how to vote, just simply deal with vote. Let me bring President Harris in, Virginia Harris, too. She's going to kick us off into our last segment, which is a very important segment. And we're so glad that our friend Virginia Harris is with us, who has always supported everything that we've ever done in these kinds of shows.
Well, good evening, everyone. It is truly an honor to join you this evening on behalf of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated. From our inception, NCBW has embraced the principle that women, especially Black women, are the guardian of families and community well-being. We are the caretakers, the advocates, and often the first line of defense when it comes to protecting our children's health and welfare of our loved ones. And in this moment, that responsibility feels more critical than ever. In a time when misinformation spread rapidly, our role in protecting our children's future demand clarity, courage, and commitment. As women and mothers, grandmothers and aunties and mentors, we have a sacred duty to protect our children, not just from physical harm, but from the confusion and doubt that comes from untrustworthy information when it is placed by fear or speculation. Their safety, development, and peace of mind are our collective concern. To do this work, we must be armed with knowledge. We must insist on access to honest, evidence-based information that empower us to make sound decisions because facts, not fear, should guide our family health choices. We also recognize that every parent, caregiver has a responsibility to stay informed. That means doing the work, asking the question, seeking clarity, and listening to experts like the people on stage tonight. They are here to serve and not mislead. So that's why we're here tonight. This gathering is about equipping our community with trusted voices, accurate knowledge, and the power to lead our family forward. Because when parents are empowered, children are protected, and that is how we build stronger, healthier communities together. So thank you, Dr. Tuckson, for engaging us in this very important conversation this evening.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad that you led us into this notion again of focusing in on parents and how really they connect in with pediatricians. Before I do that, by the way, I forgot to mention that Catherine Tucker serves on her local city council. And so again, she's taking care of business on every level. So good for you, Dr. Tucker. We appreciate that. And so Dr. Hancock, let me start with you then, as Virginia Harris sort of gets us into thinking about our role as parents. What are the kinds of conversations that you are having with parents who are skeptical, who have misconceptions, and what are you saying to them in response to their concerns?
Very good question. It really revolves around the things that we've talked about tonight. The most common concern that I get is that vaccines cause autism or other developmental milestone impairments, such as speech, that vaccines contain aluminum and other heavy metals that end up causing what has been classified in social media as heavy metal poisoning, that vaccines will impact their children's fertility. We address each and every one of those. The last one that I got recently was that pediatricians get kickbacks in order to give children vaccines. I'm still rolling a 2008 Honda, so clearly I'm not on the payroll. But we talk about those things. My response is that I don't debate. I don't argue. I don't put my ego in it. I address the concerns. We talk through them. I ask them what their sources are so we can talk through where to get your information. I have to let everyone know that about 50% of my patient population are children who are not vaccinated or whose parents vaccinate at an alternate schedule. And the reason why I do it is because at some point there may be an opportunity for them to be open to immunizations. I create a very judgment-free environment, which allows these families to come in. And what I will tell you is we're seeing increased cases of whooping cough, measles, etc. More of my vaccine hesitant families are deciding to get vaccines. I don't understand how physicians do refuse families who are vaccine hesitant, especially in communities of color where it's hard to find a Black pediatrician, especially a Black female pediatrician. And so for me to be able to create that space is very important. And lastly, as a Black mother, I talked to my families about how I navigated the decision for my daughter and that I wouldn't do anything for them that I did not do for my daughter. We talked through all of the ingredients, explaining that the stainless steel pot you cooked her chicken in probably transferred more aluminum than what's in this shot, or what you went and got her some fast food from has more heavy metals in it than the vaccine. We keep it real and we keep it honest. And because of that, I think that's why families come as far as Georgia to see me so that they can talk through in a safe space how to navigate these decisions around vaccines.
I'm going to turn to you, Dr. Whitley Williams and Oliver Brooks in a moment, but I want to alert my panelists that I'm getting ready to come to the lightning round where each of you will get 20 seconds to make the one major point that you really want to make, either that you've already made or one that you haven't made and you want to make. So I just want to alert my panelists to that. But Dr. Patricia Whitley Williams, again, all of these parents are listening to us now. How can we help make sure that they have the best interaction with their own personal pediatrician?
Definitely. Make sure that you have a relationship with your pediatrician, that you feel comfortable in asking these questions. I think Dr. Hancock really laid the environment, the background. Pediatricians are being instructed more and more how to have these conversations, being taught and assessing their interpersonal skills, communication skills, what we call interviewing parents who may be vaccine hesitant. We actually are starting in nursing schools and medical schools and pharmacy schools. Anybody who vaccinates, we're teaching good communication schools. This is ongoing as we're speaking. And it's so important so that the pediatrician or anybody who is eligible to vaccinate can have those conversations without being judgmental. I wanted to bring up one other myth that occurs, and I've heard this over and over again, that particularly in the Black community, that they're being injected with something that will identify them, whether it's a chip or some material that somehow will allow the government to follow them. If you have a cell phone, very easy to track you. So trust me, vaccines do not have any kind of tracking material. I want to make that perfectly clear. There are many other ways for the government to track you. So I just wanted to relay that. But it's very important for pediatricians to be open, and our parents, you should go in, ask what vaccinations they're getting, what they're preventing, what are the side effects. There are very few and they're very rare. Pediatricians will tell you. But, obviously sometimes the children can develop fever and so forth. So ask those questions. And if you have a question or you read something on, social media, make sure you post that to the pediatrician because they are knowledgeable. And guess what? Most pediatricians have immunized hundreds, if not thousands of children. I've been practicing for over 40 years as a pediatric infectious disease specialist. So I've seen all the side effects of the vaccines because those children would be referred to me. I can tell you that I see very, very few. In fact, I see more complications from the actual disease. And I just quickly want to share in the hospital, an inpatient unit, I had twins, 7-month-old twins who came in with ear infections, both sides. And also they had what we call mastoiditis, which is an infection of the bone that connects with the inner ear. And it's a very serious infection. So these two 7-month-olds, and it was due to pneumococcus. These children were totally unimmunized, totally preventable. So here you had twins, and the mother had 2 other children. Those children at home missed her. The twins hospitalized for at least 10 days. They went through surgery. They had multiple imaging studies, scans, and so forth. Totally preventable. So just make sure you get that good information from your pediatrician and do not be afraid to ask.
I think it's very important that we hear what you're saying. You are the person who was responsible for the care of the complicated patients. And you are saying that you were not seeing any of the stuff that we've been hearing in the news about all these dangers. And in fact, what you were seeing were the complications of people that were not immunized and how serious it was. Dr. Brooks, really quickly, your thought as a pediatrician and how you establish a great patient-physician relationship with your families.
No, I look at it both ways. It's the parent /child /family and the pediatrician. Someone said the relationship is so important. So when I was in the South, people didn't say I'm going to the doctor. They said I'm going to Dr. Hancock. So you should have a feeling when you're talking about going to your pediatrician. You don't say, I'm going to the pediatrician. I'm going to see Dr. Patricia Whitley Williams. You know, she was on that committee. So, you know, you want your patient to feel that way about you. Dr. Adams said something very important. Don't be afraid as a parent to ask a question. As a pediatrician, respect every question. And the key to that is you got to go to where they go. And this is the most important thing to me. These decisions are being made by the heart and not the head. So you can show them spreadsheets, graphs, and facts and figures, but you have to get to their heart. And you're going to get to their heart how? Through that relationship. So the last thing I'll say is go to the pediatrician. Okay. And if you have one that's good, hold on to them. Bake them a cake at Christmas. I mean, this is how the world works. And so, you know, I practice, and that was how things went.
Well, Dr. Brooks, I'll let that be your lightning round statement. It was beautiful and well framed. Dr. Adams, I'm going to just go right quick, and each of you all have like 10, 12 seconds. But very briefly, what's the lock-in point? We've covered a lot of ground. What's your lock-in point for tonight?
My lock-in point, we once were denied care because of the color of our skin, and our ancestors fought so that we can now have access. Don't deny yourself care. The only bad question is the one you don't ask.
Thank you. Peter Marks.
So I would say you're going to hear a lot of misinformation and lies in the coming months about maybe trying to have you not take vaccines. You need to make sure that you feel comfortable asking someone you trust, exactly that kind of person we're talking about, that pediatrician that you know by their name, or even your clergy member, to immunize yourself, because you need the right information. And I just worry that there will be people who may talk like we talk, but be giving you misinformation about why you shouldn't be taking vaccines. Don't trust that. Go ask somebody that you can trust, that you know.
Thank you. Dr. Hancock.
Don't let fear fuel your decision-making as a parent. And for providers, don't allow your medical training to create a space of judgment where families don't feel comfortable enough to ask those questions.
Oh, my goodness. Dr. Whitley Williams.
You can be the best advocate for your child, and you can be the best parent by getting your child vaccinated. You will protect their future in many more ways than you will ever know.
Danielle Hall.
I would just say, let's put this misinformation to rest. Vaccines don't cause autism. It's time to move past fear and focus on what matters. Get your children vaccinated. Let's keep everyone protected against preventable diseases.
City Council member and school nurse leader, Catherine Tucker.
I'd say build relationships, build trust, include the nurses.
And my great friend and honored, treasured colleague, Dr. Hildreth.
So, Reed, I would actually have people know that there are very few things in medicine that have had the impact on human health that vaccines have had, going all the way back to 1796. So for about 230 years, we've actually known how powerful they are and how impactful they can be. And I think people need to know they're safe, they're effective, and they've actually changed the course of human history. Vaccines are the joint.
That is
anymore.
I like that. Thank you so much. Well, to our guests, this has been a very enlightening evening. I particularly, though, am also very appreciative of our welcomers. There is a very close relationship that we found during our fight against COVID between Black health leadership, Black fraternal and sorority and community organizations, and Black faith leaders. We have come together. I think most people do not realize, and let me remind us, that for the first time in history, we closed the disparities gap between Black and white health in America as represented by primary series COVID vaccines. That was extraordinary. But what's more important, and this is what most people really don't realize, is that Black life expectancy the second year in the pandemic was better than white America. And so I want you to understand, we saved our own lives by coming together. And now we're coming together to save our children's lives. And so we're very excited that so many of our, when you look at the flyer that advertised this show, it is an extraordinary group of our organizations that represent the heart and soul of the Black community, including organizations of Black barbers and Black beauticians. They were part of the sponsoring group for this activity. So we really do, cover a lot of our community coming together. In closing, I want to just give a couple quick thanks. One to our friend and colleague, Kimberly Jeffries Leonard. Kim Jeffries Leonard is a real stalwart for helping us to work with all of our colleagues from the fraternities and sororities and social organizations. I want to thank the team at blackdoctor.org, Asia, Bailey, Ashanti Carter, Derek Lane, and I particularly want to thank the CEO of blackdoctor.org, Reggie Ware. This was all done gratis. I want to make everyone clear on conflict of interest. There was no money, no sponsorship, no nothing. Everyone participated in this out of their concern and love for our people, for our children, and our community. So I really want to thank Reggie Ware for all the help that they donated to make this show happen. Ladies and gentlemen of our audience, we care deeply about you. We care deeply about your children. And all of us who are on this program represent the army of Black health leadership, whether it's physicians, scientists, or nurses. We're all here saying to you as strongly as we can, if you have questions, we have answers. Turn to us. We've earned your trust, and we will always work hard to earn your trust. We are here for you. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.